সুপ্রিয় দর্শক, আসসালামু আলাইকুম ওয়া রাহমাতুল্লাহি ওয়া বারাকাতুহু। আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি দি কনভারসেশনে। আজকে আমরা লিবিয়া এবং মরক্কো নিয়ে আলোচনা করব। আপনারা নিশ্চয়ই লক্ষ্য করেছেন যে একটি প্রলয়ঙ্করী ভূমিকম্প মরক্কোর বেশ কয়েকটি শহর এবং অনেক অঞ্চলকে একদম মাটির সঙ্গে মিশিয়ে দিয়েছে। ৩,০০০-এর অধিক মানুষ নিহত হয়েছে এবং টেন্স অফ থাউজেন্ডস যারা তাদের ঘরবাড়ি থেকে চলে যেতে হয়েছে। আরেকটি প্রলয়ঙ্করী বন্যা লিবিয়ার ডার্না শহরে তাদের স্মরণকালের সবচেয়ে বৃহৎ বন্যায় প্রায় 11,500 মানুষের প্রাণহানি ঘটে এবং আরও প্রায় 10,000 মানুষ মিসিং আছে। ধারণা করা হচ্ছে যে মৃত্যুর সংখ্যা 20,000 ছাড়িয়ে যেতে পারে। আজকে আমরা এই দুটি বিষয় নিয়ে আলোচনা করব এবং এ থেকে উদ্ভূত যে হিউম্যানিটেরিয়ান ক্রাইসিস সেইটা নিয়ে আমরা আলোচনা করব। সুপ্রিয় dear viewers, assalamu alaikum. You are watching the conversation. Today we'll be talking about Libya and Morocco. As you'll be fully aware by now, a devastating flood in the city of Darna, east of Libya, claimed more than 11,000 lives so far. 10,000 people are estimated to, more than 10,000 people are still missing, and it is feared that the death toll may well exceed 20,000. In Morocco, a devastating earthquake has claimed more than 3,000 lives, and tens of thousands are displaced and living in camps or has nowhere to live. So we are going to today discuss the humanitarian crisis arising from this. What is being done? What can you do? What are the British Muslims doing? To discuss this, we have a wonderful line of guests in the studio and also from Tripoli in Libya. I shall introduce them to you in a moment. But first, a reminder. You are watching on TV1. Those of you who are not able to continue to watch it, or those who don't have Sky, you may watch our program at any time, either now or later, on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Alternatively, you can also download our app. To do that, you need to go to TV1 UK Facebook page or YouTube channel. You can go now or at any time afterwards to watch this program. If you have a comment or a question, or perhaps you are affected or you have some insight in those affected areas, please feel free to call us on the number you will see on the screen. Let me introduce you my guest. First, I've got on my far right Mehdi Chowdhury, who is head of fundraising at Salam Charity. Mehdi, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
We are also joined from Tripoli via Zoom with Dr. Guma El-Gamaty, who is the head of Taghyeer party in Libya. Dr. Guma, welcome to our show.
Salam alaikum. Thank you very much for having me, Brother Talha, and my salam and greetings to all your viewers.
Thank you. And আমাদের সঙ্গে আরো যোগ দিয়েছে সাউথ এন্ড এসেক্স জামে মসজিদের চেয়ার নাজমুল হোসাইন। নাজমুল হোসাইন, আপনাকে আমাদের প্রোগ্রামে স্বাগত।
Assalamu alaikum, viewers.
Dr. Guma, if I may begin with you, we know that Libya has been going through some significant difficulties over the years since the toppling of Muammar Gaddafi and various crises that has risen ever since. I mean, of course, more than 10,000 people died, and that's big by any scale. But in Libyan context, how big of a calamity is this, and how is it affecting people in Libya?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This disaster we just had over a week ago is the biggest and largest disaster ever remembered in Libya. The only thing close to this was in the early 1960s. About 60 years ago, we had an earthquake in a city called Al-Marj, which is about 80 kilometers east of Benghazi. In those days, I think about 1,600 people died as a result of that earthquake. But this, as a result of Hurricane Daniel, this calamity, this disaster is unprecedented. You know, very, very strong rainfall. Within few hours, huge amounts of water came down a valley on the city center of Darna. Darna is about 300 kilometers east of Benghazi, and it's about 1,400 kilometers east of the capital Tripoli, where I am now. Darna is an enclave where to the south of it is a mountain, and to the north is the sea. So it's an enclave between the sea and the mountain, and it has a big valley coming down from the mountain all the way to the sea, which splits the city into half and runs through the city center. This valley has two, it's like a little river. It has two dams, one at the top and one in the middle. Those dams have been there for about 40 years, and normally the dams will hold the majority of the water if there is heavy rain, so there has never been major floods. But this time, the amount of rain is unprecedented. The dams filled very, very quickly, and then both of them were completely busted, and almost like a tsunami, you know, in Arabic we call it tawfan, came down. The water was about 30, 40 meters high, and it literally swept the whole of the city center into the sea. Buildings as high as 4, 5, 6 stories high were swept into the sea, cars, whatever in the way. So it happened 3 o'clock in the morning, Brother Talha.
Yes.
People were asleep. They had no pre-warning whatsoever. They knew there was rain and there was wind and there was a hurricane, but nobody at all warned them of what might happen. In fact, to the contrary, they were told by the local security authorities to stay put in their houses and not to leave from 8 o'clock in the evening. And this happened about 3 o'clock in the morning, about literally 7 hours later. So this is a major disaster. We think as much as 25 to 30,000 people have been affected. Most of them are still missing. The bodies collected are in thousands, and many, many more bodies are still in the sea, in their cars, in their buildings, in their houses. They are sitting at the bottom of the sea. They have not even been collected yet as bodies.
Dr. Juma will come to you shortly, but Mehdi, and both this, we'll talk about Libya and Morocco, not just Libya, but Libya in particular, they're going through a lot. And one of the challenge is that the response has not really reached the local people in the scale or to the extent that it should. Are you able to give us some insight as to what sort of effort are there?
Yeah, I think for us as an organization from Salam Charity, you know, because we have some contacts on the ground, we're able to you know, reach the locals and do what we can. But having said that, I think, of course, you know, there's situations locally, politically, you know, which make it difficult for organizations or foreign aid to actually reach the people. So when, you know, the brother was talking about, you know, collecting bodies, you know, there's deep concerns about, you know, the water being contaminated. Something which is as serious as it is, you know, something that requires that aid is very basic, very easy to do, but it's unfortunate that it's difficult for international organizations or even locally for locals to actually carry out and continue to do the work that they need to do to, you know, collect the bodies and do, you know, whatever good they can.
One of the challenge obviously is the absence of a functioning government locally in Darna, which is recognized internationally. In fact, it's within the control of a group that's, although some countries tacitly approve it, but it's not approved by the UN. Have you seen any movement within the humanitarian organizations to see whether there could be concerted effort to perhaps develop some notion of a support package that is fit for this massive,
I think
shocking event?
In regards to Libya, I can't say for certain. What I can say, I was out in Morocco just a few days ago, and I've seen that the efforts throughout the whole country, similar to when the Rohingya crisis happened in Bangladesh, you know, local people from different regions of Bangladesh, you know, were coming forward to actually provide the aid. So similarly in Morocco, you have different groups, you have different parties, you have different, you know, people from different regions. But it was beautiful to see everyone actually coming together. But the need is obviously, you know, for
we'll come to Morocco in a moment. Yeah. We'll talk a bit more on Morocco. Nazmul bhai, আপনার কাছে আসি। ব্রিটিশ মুসলিম কমিউনিটি তো সবসময় যখনই কোনো ডিজাস্টার হয়, প্রয়োজন হয়, যে প্রান্তেই হোক, তারা স্বতঃস্ফূর্তভাবে এগিয়ে আসে মানুষকে সহযোগিতা করার জন্য। এইবারে কি আপনি সেম জিনিস দেখছেন কিনা, এবং আপনারা এই ক্রাইসিসে মানে সাপোর্ট করার জন্য আপনারা কোনো বিশেষ কোনো উদ্যোগ নিয়েছেন কিনা?
জি, আলহামদুলিল্লাহ, ভেরি নাইস কোয়েশ্চন। আমরা আসলে, আপনারা সবাই জানেন, আসলে আমাদের মসজিদের খতিব এই ব্রিটেনের সুনামধন্য ইসলামিক স্কলার শেখ মাহমুদুল হাসান,
জি,
আলহামদুলিল্লাহ, ওনার বদলতে আমরা কাজ করি সবসময়। তো যখনই কোনো ধরনের কোনো ডিজাস্টার ভাবে হয়, যেমন টার্কিতে হয়েছে, সিরিয়াতে হয়েছে, কিছুদিন আগে বাংলাদেশে হয়েছে, এই সাথে সাথেই আমরা কিন্তু রেসপন্ড করি, আমরা কিন্তু কমিউনিটিকে অ্যাওয়ার করি। এবং গত জুম্মাতেও আমাকে বেশ মুসল্লিরা আমাকে অ্যাপ্রোচ করতেছে যে আপনারা কি কোনো উদ্যোগ নিতেছেন, আপনারা কি যে কোনো মানে যাওয়ার কোনো প্রোগ্রাম নিতেছেন। মানে পাবলিক সবসময়, মানে যে সময় কোনো ডিজাস্টার হইলেই পাবলিক সবসময় চেষ্টা করে যাতে সাহায্য সহযোগিতা করতে, এবং আমরাও চেষ্টা করি, আমাদের মসজিদের পক্ষ থেকে চেষ্টা করি। আমরা তো নিজে গেছিলাম আমাদের এই যখন টার্কিতে, সিরিয়াতে যখন ভূমিকম্প হয়, তখন আমরা নিজেই গেছিলাম আমরা সাথে। তখন আমরা আলহামদুলিল্লাহ বেশ টাকা রাইজ করছিলাম আমরা। এরপরে বাংলাদেশে যখন কিছুদিন আগে চিটাগাং যখন ফ্লাড,
এখনকার, ওটা তো আমরা কিছু শুনছি, এখনকার ব্যাপারে আপনাদের কোনো বিশেষ কোনো উদ্যোগ আছে কিনা? শুধু কালেকশন করছেন, বা আপনারা কিভাবে কাদের মাধ্যমে কাজ করছেন? আপনারা তো রিলিফ অর্গানাইজেশন না।
না, আমরা আসলে এই যখন মানিটা কালেকশন করি, যখন কোনো ইমার্জেন্সি সিচুয়েশন হয়, তখন আমরা সাথে সাথে ফান্ডরাইজিং শুরু করে দিই।
তো এইবার আপনারা করছেন কিনা?
এবার আমরা আগামী সপ্তাহ থেকে শুরু করবো ইনশাল্লাহ আমরা। কারণ আমরা সবসময় চেষ্টা করি ট্রান্সপারেন্ট ভালো একটা অর্গানাইজেশন দেখে যাতে এদের সাথে কাজ করতে, যাতে যারা ফিল্ডে কাজ করে তাদের সাথে আমরা সবসময় চেষ্টা করি যাওয়ার জন্য, বা ওদের সাথে যাতে কাজ করার জন্য। তো এই যে লিবিয়াতে যে ডিজাস্টারটা হয়েছে, আমরা এখন উদ্যোগ নিতেছি আগামী শুক্রবার থেকে ফান্ডরাইজিং শুরু করবো ইনশাল্লাহ।
জি, ঠিক আছে। Dr. Juma, obviously one of the concern about Libya is because of the political situation there. The Dana is in the east of Libya, which effectively is under the control of Khalifa Haftar and his administration. Some governments, if not formally recognized, supports him, but not supported by UN. And then in Tripoli, you've got a government that is backed and supported by the UN. How much of a hindrance is this political situation proving to be in terms of properly responding to this crisis?
Actually, the political divide in Libya has not been much of a hindrance. In fact, to the contrary, there has been a great mobilization of the Libyan population in general from all parts of Libya, from the west, from the south, from the east. The mobilization similar to what the brother from the charity organization was describing in Morocco and in Bangladesh. So all Libyans, Libya is about 7 million population, everybody came together, they donated, they gave food, water. A lot of people volunteered and went all the way east to Darna to help with the humanitarian efforts and with supporting efforts to find people, to shelter people, and to give them the necessary food. Also, there has been a lot of international mobilization. A lot of countries, Muslim countries, Arab countries, and also Western countries have sent, especially Turkey, and I think Bangladesh as well, and I'm sure possibly Pakistan. I can double check that, but I'm sure they have as well. They all sent groups, they sent teams, they sent supplies. So there have been a great international mobilization, and all the teams were allowed to go into the site where the disaster happened and allowed to carry out the work. Maybe there isn't that much of liaising and organization on the ground. There is a little bit of chaos. Obviously, Libyans are not experienced in managing a crisis like this because it's unprecedented. But the efforts from all Libyans and from international transcends all political differences and all political divides. Everybody, I think, is rising above the divisions and saying that this is a time of calamity, a time of crisis. It's a time of people coming together, and everybody should help deal with the situation. The kind of support and help the brother talked about bodies in the sea. Actually, there are all sorts of help needed and required. You know, food supplies, drinking water, medicines, shelter, blankets. All these things have been required and needed, and they've been sent. Not only the dead that needed to be collected and buried, probably, but also those who survived, those who found themselves without home, without the roof over their heads. They are now being housed in temporary schools and in temporary shelters, so they need housing and they need support as well. Also, looking and making a count of all those are missing. In the first 2 days, there was no telecommunication, no telephone lines, no internet, no electricity. So people were not able to contact relatives and make sure who actually survived and who did not, and so on. But now things are getting better. So there is a massive effort. There is a huge operation. There is international support from Muslim and other countries as well. But yes, I mean, the divisions and the conflict in a way has actually affected this, because if it wasn't for incompetent governments and local authorities, this would not have happened. You know, those dams should have been looked after and checked many times over the last 12 years. The population should have been warned that there is a danger, and they should have been evacuated hours and hours before the calamity struck. And this, in a way, incompetence and the weakness of the local authorities and the local government is a direct result of the divisions and the weak institutions in Libya, and the lack of a strong central government, one authority that can actually look after the entire population. So I take your point that the divisions, in a way, indirectly have affected the way we have managed and we are managing and dealing with this crisis so far.
Thank you. Mehdi, just give us a sense of what the response been from British Muslims or British people to this crisis.
I think the same with any response that we've seen over the last few years when it comes to Syrian refugees, the Rohingya, you know, the earthquake that happened in Turkey just a few months ago. The response has been the same. As soon as we hear of death, crisis, people losing homes, people losing loved ones, I think from, you know, the local communities that we're in, everybody does want to help. You know, we have tons of volunteers who are always ready to, you know, fly out, raise funds. You know, we're in constant communication with institutions, with masajids, you know, across the country. We have businesses, you know, who are willing to donate their proceeds towards charities. So the support has been immense, maybe not as large as when the Turkey earthquake happened, but I think that's down to, I think as a society, we look at, we like to compare. And when you look at the Turkey earthquake, obviously it was vast compared to Morocco. But one thing that I always say is, look, the person that it has affected, even if it is just the one individual, they don't compare to Turkey. You know, for them, their life has been.
But if we look at, I mean, one of the, I was trying to check whether Disaster Emergency Committee has launched an appeal. Often they do when there's a major crisis, as they did for the Syria Turkey earthquake. In terms of death toll, the Moroccan may have been much smaller in scale compared to Turkey. But the Dana, if the estimates come to materialize,
and it most likely will be,
would be comparable, if not bigger. And also, Turkey is a much better prepared country in many ways.
Of course.
Significant experience, better resources, and so on. Libya, on the other hand, for all sorts of reasons, has significantly less. So do you think, I'm sure the Muslim community has responded, but the wider society and the established big organizations, have they really been?
I think that's down to journalism, that's down to the news, that's down to social media, and how much exposure these things get. We have seen internally, within the Muslim community, everybody is talking about it. You know, within our own circles, our own communities, everybody is trying to respond. They're trying to reach out and see in what ways they can support, you know, organizations like Salam Charity to actually respond to this crisis. But I think when the crisis itself isn't getting as much exposure. There's only so much we can do as an organization. So when you talk about the DEC and other, larger...
And I appreciate your organization is not part of DEC, and we don't have anybody from DEC.
Yeah.
But it struck me that it's over a week now, and there hasn't been a coordinated...
Yeah. So we as an organization, we don't go too much into the politics of why and but I think our job is, of course, where there's a need, there's a humanitarian crisis, we try and respond and help as many people as we can. So that's our main sort of mission at the moment. So we're trying to help people in Libya, we're trying to help as many people as we can in Morocco, short term as well as long term, inshallah.
Right. নাজমুল আপনার কাছে আসি। আপনি প্রথমে আমাদেরকে বলছিলেন যে অনেকেই সাহায্য করতে চাচ্ছে, তো আপনি তো কমিউনিটির মাঝখানে থাকেন, কমিউনিটিকে নিয়ে আপনার কাজ মসজিদের চেয়ার হিসেবে। সাধারণ মানুষদের মধ্যে আপনাদের লোকাল কমিউনিটিতে লিবিয়া মরক্কো দুইটা নিয়ে কীরকম তাদের কনসার্ন বা হেল্প করার যে ইচ্ছা, এটা কীরকম আপনি দেখলেন?
আলহামদুলিল্লাহ, যখনই কোনো ক্রাইসিস শুরু হয় তখন সাথে সাথেই কিন্তু আমাদের জুম্মার খুতবায় কিন্তু এটা চলে আসে।
জি।
আর খুতবায় চলে আসার পরে কিন্তু পাবলিক সবাই কনসার্ন হয়ে যায়, এবং আমাকে তো সবাই বলতেছে যে আপনারা কি উদ্যোগ নিচ্ছেন, কিভাবে কি কাজ করতেছেন, আমাদেরকে আপনারা বলেন। তো পাবলিক সবসময় আসলে এই ধরনের কোনো ডিজাস্টার হলে সবসময় চেষ্টা করে পাশে থাকতে, যাতে কিছু সাহায্য করা যায়, কারণ সবাই তো যেতে পারতেছে না। কিন্তু আলহামদুলিল্লাহ আমাদের এসেক্স জামে মসজিদের মুসল্লিরা কিন্তু স্বতঃস্ফূর্তভাবে এগিয়ে আসে।
ঠিক আছে, তা আপনার এক্সপিরিয়েন্স হলো যে লোকজন উন্মুখ হয়ে আছে যে কিভাবে তারা হেল্প করবে, জাস্ট উদ্যোগের দরকার। ঠিক আছে, সুপ্রিয় দর্শক, আমরা একটি বিরতি যাচ্ছি, বিরতির পর আবারও আমরা আরও বিস্তারিত আলোচনা করব। ততক্ষণ পর্যন্ত আমাদের সঙ্গেই থাকুন।
where it's possible. And brothers and sisters, please come forward and help save lives.
সুপ্রিয় দর্শক, আসসালামু আলাইকুম। বিরতির পর আবার আপনাদেরকে দি কনভারসেশনে স্বাগত। আপনাদের সঙ্গে আছি আমি তালহা আহমেদ। আজকে আমরা লিবিয়া এবং মরক্কোর প্রাকৃতিক দুর্যোগ নিয়ে আলোচনা করছি। আপনারা নিশ্চয়ই এতক্ষণে অবগত হয়ে গেছেন যে লিবিয়াতে ধারণা করা হচ্ছে যে মৃতের সংখ্যা 20,000 ছাড়িয়ে যেতে পারে। এই পর্যন্ত প্রায় 11,500-এর মতো মানুষের মৃত্যু কনফার্ম করা হয়েছে। মরক্কোতে 3,000-এর মতো কনফার্ম ডেড এবং tens of thousands of people, both in Morocco and in Libya, tens of thousands of people are displaced without home and in need of support. So we are discussing Libya and Moroccan crisis. We are trying to understand the extent of the devastation beyond simply numbers. We're also trying to understand what are the key challenges, what has been the response from our community, from you. We are also interested in knowing what you think. If you have a comment, experience, or any insight, or if you have been affected in any way, feel free to call us on the number that you will see on the screen from time to time. Mehdi, if I start with you, has there been much, I mean, in Morocco, let's talk a little bit about Morocco. We haven't spoken much about it. Although Morocco doesn't have the same challenge as Libya in terms of the government, but there were some criticism early on about whether the authorities in Morocco were moving quickly to respond to this crisis and whether they were being sufficiently cooperative to facilitate the support from international community. You said that you've been there. Have you? I mean, do you get a sense that everybody now are there with all hands on the deck?
I think from my observations, it seems as though everyone, like you said, are supporting. Everyone, locally as well as internationally, are coming forward to help. The thing about Morocco and where the epicenter is, it's in the mountains.
It's very remote.
High Atlas Mountains, yeah. So it's not so much about the efforts; it's more about reaching those hard to get to areas. So when you compare to somewhere like Turkey, where the earthquake happened, it was very easy to fill up a big truck and take as much aid as possible. The problem with Morocco was you can have a big truck, but you can't take it up the mountains. So we had to get 4x4s, we had to get small vans, and how many people really can you reach? So it's just about coordinating efforts and trying to make sure that you're reaching enough people in time to actually, prevent as much suffering as possible.
Is there a sense how many people are affected? We know that the estimate of death is around 3,000,
Yeah.
or confirmed death is just over 3,000.
So from my last sort of calculations, I believe almost 300,000 people were left homeless. When you talk about affected, directly affected, of course, you've got about 300,000 people, but there's a lot of issues that arise when situations like this happen. So, for example, when you look at an earthquake in Morocco, people are losing their homes. Al Jazeera wrote an article, quite in depth actually, about the exploitation of young girls. And these things do happen, which, not everyone really takes into account. When you look at so many people living homeless, there's a deep concern of outbreak of disease. So that's where hygiene kits are essential. It's not just about providing food, but you have to prevent issues that may, come along further down the line. So, for example, when we first heard about the concern of the government of the outbreak of disease, immediately we started packing hygiene kits. We started providing, female sanitary products, nappies for babies. This is basic items that I guess you and I would take for granted on a daily basis. But I think in order to actually prevent further issues down the line and illnesses and disease, these things are quite essential.
Okay. Dr. Juma, there are some concerns. I think there's been some demonstration in Darna even today that many people are still left without any meaningful support Is it your sense that efforts are being made to reach to all the people affected? And are you satisfied with the level of effort that is being put in?
No, I think the effort falls well short of what is needed. I mean, Darna is a small city of about maybe 150,000 population, and we are talking about possibly quarter of this population have been affected, either dead and lost as a result of this hurricane, or many more have been displaced. They cannot go back to their houses because of the flood and the damage and what the water has carried in terms of a lot of changing almost the topography and the landscape. So we're talking about figures I've heard is about 5,000 families displaced who don't have now proper housing and shelter. So also the city has been split into half. The eastern side and the western side, they cannot reach each other because 5 bridges have been completely destroyed that have been over this valley called the Darna Valley. And the roads that connects the east of the city to the west of the city have been completely destroyed and washed out into the sea. So a matter of building temporary roads quickly, temporary bridges, this is a huge engineering operation, and it's a huge task. Libya does not have the facilities and the ability to meet these challenges. So yes, people are detached. People cannot reach each other out and reach relatives. A lot of families, about 5,000, do not have now proper housing. Children cannot go back to school because their schools have been destroyed. Hospitals and small clinics have been destroyed. The banks have been destroyed. People cannot go and draw cash out of their bank account because the banking system is still a bit old-fashioned here in Libya. So all these are huge challenges. Of course, the challenge of disease and infections and all that as well, which means that we need a lot of medical supplies and medical teams and to be on top of the situation so we don't have any infectious diseases and things like that. So although the mobilization has been great locally, internally, from all the Libyan people from all sides of Libya, the mobilization international has been also good, but I think we have a problem of coordination, problem of liaising all the efforts, problem of crisis management, and problem of prioritizing and addressing all the needs. A lot of effort has been on collecting bodies, and now probably attention will move to collecting all those bodies under the sea, sitting under the sea, which could be even thousands. But then what about those who survived? What about those who are alive now? Who also have a lot of needs, like, as I said, like shelter, housing, and medicine.
From the picture that you paint, this is beyond the capacity of any humanitarian organization. It really needs significant state-level intervention. Given Libya's situation, which is very clear, have you seen significant state response from other countries, neighboring countries, Western European countries?
Well, I think the biggest response we've seen and the quickest response we've been seeing probably has been from Turkey, and who straight away started bringing in needed help through the air and through sea, obviously, because Turkey is on the northern side of the Mediterranean. So by sea, ships can only probably in 6 to 8 hours can reach Darna, which is very close to the south of Turkey. Other countries, yes, we've seen Italy, we've seen Algeria, we've seen some Gulf countries. I've heard also teams and support from Bangladesh, from Pakistan. The Americans, I think they have talked about donating money to international organizations, probably mainly American organizations, but I'm not sure that there has been any American personnel coming in. There have been some UK support as well, and also French. So yes, there are.
So there has been response. Okay. We'll talk about the
There
local.
has been a lot of nationalities have come in. Yes, 100%. I
Thank-
think the challenge is coordination and liaising between all of them.
Yeah, we'll come to the local leadership because the local Libyan leadership is important in enabling all of these supports to be effective. নাজমুল ভাই আপনার কাছে আসি। একটা ইস্যু যেটা হয় যে যখন এরকম কোনো ডিজাস্টার হয় সাথে সাথে কিন্তু সবার একটা আবেগ থাকে, সবাই হেল্প করতে চায়, কিন্তু আমরা এখন পর্যন্ত যা শুনলাম যে ইয়েস ইমিডিয়েট হেল্প দরকার, যে ফুড দরকার, মেডিসিন দরকার, ইত্যাদি দরকার, কিন্তু যে ড্যামেজ বা লসের যে এক্সটেন্ট, এই ইমিডিয়েট সাপোর্টটা আসলে অনেক ছোট। লং টার্ম সাপোর্ট যে পরিমাণ সাপোর্ট সেটা আরও অনেক বেশি, অনেক সিরিয়াস। তো আপনাদের এরকম কোনো চিন্তা আছে কিনা যে হ্যাঁ ইমিডিয়েট সাপোর্ট তো করতে হবে, কিন্তু যখন এটা হেডলাইন থেকে সরে যায় তখন যেন মানুষের মন থেকে এই ইস্যুগুলো দূরে সরে না যায়, সেরকম কোনো উদ্যোগ আপনারা নিচ্ছেন কিনা?
হ্যাঁ, আমাদের সবসময় মানে এটা উদ্যোগ থাকে যে সময়, কারণ আমাদের শেখ তো এই বাস্তবমুখী খুতপা দেয় সবসময়, যে যেটাই নিড হয় এটাই খুতপা দেয়। তো আমরা বেশ কিছু কাজ করছি। মনে করেন আমাদের কাজ হয়েছে এই বাংলাদেশের ফ্লাডের সময়, এরপরে আফ্রিকাতে আমরা কয়েকটা মসজিদ করছি যেগুলো নিড ছিল। বর্তমানে আমাদের প্রজেক্ট চলতেছে বাংলাদেশে একটা ফ্লাডে এফেক্টেড মসজিদ কাজ চলতেছে। এরপরে উগান্ডায় আমাদের কাজ চলতেছে, একটা বিরাট একটা মসজিদ করতেছি আমরা আমাদের কমিউনিটির মসজিদের পক্ষ থেকে। তো এইভাবে মানে পরবর্তী যাহাতে মানে এফেক্ট হইলে এই পিরিয়ড যেটা অ্যাকশন, এরপরে যাহাতে ঘরবাড়ি বানিয়ে দেওয়া যায় বা মসজিদ নষ্ট হয়ে গেছে মসজিদ বিল করে দেওয়ার আমরা এগুলো উদ্যোগ নেই আমরা। এবং আমি আশা করি ভিউয়ার যারা আছেন ব্রিটেনে যত মসজিদ আছে সবাই এই প্রজেক্টগুলো নিবেন আশা করি।
Mehdi, obviously, understandably, we focus a lot on immediate response, and also it's probably insensitive to question how effectively some of these charities are reaching out. But one of the challenges that remains is whether, especially when you have so many charities of so many different sizes, especially the smaller ones and so on, what is being done to make sure that no one is left behind, and with it to plan not just for the immediate response but also mid to long term?
Of course, I'm actually quite glad you brought that up. So like you said, there's only so much one organization can do. So I think in order to make sure that no one's left behind, in order to make sure that everyone's being supported in some way, shape or form, it's all about doing the needs assessments. It's all about being on the ground, doing your research, speaking to people, going out there to communities and ensuring that everyone is being supported. But I think when situations like this happen, initially when the crisis starts, it's very easy to sort of be remote and flexible to where you're going. But I think when situations like this happen, to ensure you get to reach everyone, I think some sort of intervention from the government is required. So I believe in Morocco, the government or the army will be taken over to ensure that the efforts are being coordinated through the army, just so they know that the same people aren't being supported more than once, and other people are being left behind, for example.
And also the logistics. I mean, in Morocco, given how remote it is, you need airlifting, you need a whole...
Of course. And when it comes to long-term support, I think this is where the community comes in. When you see things on social media, when you see that there's, you hear about the death tolls and you hear about the stats and the stories, it's very easy to sort of feel that empathy and want to donate. And alhamdulillah, the community always does come forward. But I think the majority of the work and the most impactful work is long-term. So if these people have lost their homes, for example, and you're looking at psychosocial care, you're looking at therapy from all this trauma, that's the support that would actually be most impactful long-term. But that's also the work and the activities and the projects that actually cost the most. But that's usually when we see less of a response from the community, because like you said earlier, out of sight, out of mind, when it's not on social media as much anymore, when you're not hearing about the death tolls and the country's moving forward, you don't get as much of the community coming forward and actually saying, you know what, let's carry on building these houses, let's offer more support.
But maybe, I mean, I'm just trying to understand,
Yeah.
it's not my sector, but maybe, do you think the charities are doing enough to better plan? So for example, when you're pitching now,
Yeah.
Instead of simply taking funds with specific promise to provide emergency care,
Yeah.
perhaps the charities needs to be smarter, and maybe they are
Of course,
already,
of course, yeah,
to
yeah.
use this opportunity to raise funds both for the immediate response
And
but
for
also
afterwards.
for the long term.
I know some organizations are doing that, but I think when you have such a vast need initially, you know, and there are people going hungry, there are people who need medication, there are people who need tents and safety and security and shelter, you know, it's very hard to ignore those sort of needs, you know, initially. I know organizations, I know Salam Charity for one, we are already looking at long-term plans of, you know, providing shelter and how, you know, we can help long-term. But it's not as easy, and I think it's more about maybe coordinating efforts, maybe partnering up with local organizations who know more about the local areas and the regions, and actually doing the needs assessments properly and thoroughly.
Dr. Juma, earlier we were touching on the importance of local leadership, leadership from Libyan government, leadership from the local authorities in those areas. The scale of devastation in Darna is such that you need effectively to reconstruct probably the entire town. And that will need a huge amount of goodwill from the international community, huge amount of leadership from the local political governmental leaders. How confident are you that your country can rise above it and do a good job? Dr. Juma, did you hear me?
I think, I don't know, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Did you get my question? Let me just repeat that again. So, I mean, the scale of devastation is so huge, it will need effectively reconstructing the whole city with significant infrastructure. That requires an international effort, and that requires strong collaboration between local and international
Yes.
players. Due to political situation, we know that not every country enjoys goodwill with every segment of your political leadership. How confident are you that the different factions in Libya can rise above their differences and effectively collaborate with the international community to rebuild the lost lives and the lost homes and the lost infrastructure?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not very confident. First of all, we need to start with a proper investigation into exactly what happened and where there were, if you like, failures of planning, failures of maintenance, and so on. And I don't think that investigation, if it's only carried locally, can get to the bottom of exactly what happened and give us, if you like, a comprehensive understanding and give us learning lessons. Secondly, when it comes to reconstruction, we need a lot of resources and a lot of money allocated. Yes, Libya maybe has the money, but then we will face another challenge, which is absolutely endemic in Libya over the last 12 years and even before, and that is corruption and cronyism and inefficiencies in delivering those projects to the required high standards. So all these are huge challenges, and I think without international support, without UN involvement, without close scrutiny and close observation and even texts and making sure that there are mechanisms in place to ensure that those projects for reconstruction are delivered with the required quality, with the required standards, and that the money allocated goes entirely to those projects and it's not wasted through corruption. I think that's a huge challenge. We cannot do it on our own. We don't have the strong institutions to deliver these goals, and I think the UN and the support of international community, especially countries who are very friendly to Libya and have been very helpful to Libya, countries like Turkey, for example, I think can play a very constructive role to help us out to actually recover from this major catastrophe.
Thank you. Mehdi, you mentioned earlier, and I think it's covered in a lot of media, around safety and security, safeguarding issues,
Yeah.
especially women and children, especially young
Yeah.
girls. What is being done to address it at the charity level? Of course, at the state level, there has to be a response.
I think the most or the first thing that needs to be done is provide safety, and the way you do that is by providing shelter. You know, some of these houses that we've been to completely demolished. You know, windows have turned into open, you know, walls. And from a local level, you know, people have been arrested as well for making, you know, or for having intentions of actually harming young girls and whatnot. So I think the most important thing is to provide shelter, which I know a lot of organizations are doing.
Safe and secure shelter.
Of course. If you think about what a home is, you know, it's not the way we view homes here. But a home is actually a place of safety, a place of security, a place where you feel no worries, no concerns. For us, we're not used to being in a situation where a home is anything else, you know? So I think when you lose that and you're in that situation, especially when you're in remote places like, you know, the mountains, where maybe you don't always have network, you don't always have, you know, street lights and you know, emergency services. It's something to be extremely concerned about. So shelter, I would say, is first and foremost. Put them in a place where, you know, you're minimizing risk as much as possible.
নাজমুল ভাই, আপনার কাছে জানতে চাইবো যে আমাদের সময় প্রায় শেষ, তো যারা দেখছে আমাদের প্রোগ্রাম তাদের ব্যাপারে আপনি কি বলবেন, আপনার কি মেসেজ?
না, আমার তো সোজা এখন যে ক্রাইসিস চলতেছে এখন লিবিয়ায়, এই যে মুসলমান হিসাবে আমাদের ডিউটি হচ্ছে যে আমরা তাদের পাশে দাঁড়ানো। সিরিয়া এবং মরক্কো যে আর্থকুইক হয়েছে, আমরা আশা করি সবাই এগিয়ে আসবে এবং যারা দেখতেছে প্রতিটা মসজিদের উদ্যোগ নেওয়া প্রয়োজন আমি মনে করি, যে মসজিদ কমিটির পক্ষ থেকে যে ওদের পাশে দাঁড়ানো, কারণ এটা আমাদের ইমানি দায়িত্ব এবং ইমানি ডিউটি।
Thank you. Dr. Juma, we are almost at the end of our program. What would you say to our viewers, the British Muslim community, Bangladeshi community, mosque leaders and charities? What do you want them to do?
Well, I think the Muslim community and the British Muslims have been absolutely great in supporting many Muslim causes throughout the world. And Islam teaches us to come together and support each other, especially at the times of crisis. Islam teaches that Muslims are like one body. If one part of that body experiences fever of pain, then the rest of the body comes quickly to the help and the aid. So, you know, and also you get great reward from Allah and great ajr by actually donating and supporting your fellow Muslims or any human beings who are going through crisis and going through trauma and suffering. And now, you know, we have people suffering in Morocco, and we have many more people, tens of thousands of people suffering in Darna and East Libya. So I think it's our Islamic duty to support our brothers wherever they are suffering. It's our Islamic duty to support innocent human beings who are suffering wherever they are. So I'm sure the sincerity and the goodwill and the generosity of the Muslim community and British Muslims will always come through, inshallah.
Thank you. And Mehdi, last word from you. What do you say? People will have concern whether their money is being properly used, whether which charity to support and so on. What do you say to them?
I think there's a lot of concerns over who's doing or how impactful you know, the organization's efforts are. I think, look, just do what research you can do. And give to whichever organization you feel comfortable with, but as long as you're responding, I think that's the main purpose. You know, we witnessed not just an earthquake in Morocco, not just the floods in Libya, but even last week there were earthquakes in Indonesia, there were earthquakes in Iraq, and you know, we hope that Allah protects the Ummah, but I'm sure there's more catastrophes, there's more crises, there's more natural disasters that will be happening over the coming years. So regardless of who you're supporting, regardless of who you're supporting, it's more about responding. Just make sure you respond, make sure you feel the empathy, like our esteemed doctor said, the ummah is like one body, So when it comes to moments like this, just respond. It doesn't matter who, where, how, but as long as you respond, inshallah, that's the main thing.
থ্যাংক ইউ। সুপ্রিয় দর্শক, আপনারা দেখছেন দি কনভারসেশন। আজকে আমরা লিবিয়া এবং মরক্কোর ক্রাইসিস নিয়ে আলোচনা করছিলাম। আমাদের সময় আজকে এতটুকুই। বিদায়ের পূর্বে আপনাদেরকে শুধু এটাই বলবো যে লিবিয়াতে বিশেষ করে এবং মরক্কোতেও যে ডেভাস্টেশন বিয়ন্ড ইমাজিনেশন, আমাদের হেল্প প্রয়োজন। আসুন আমরা সবাই মিলে আমাদের যার যতটুকু সামর্থ্য আছে সেই অনুযায়ী আমরা এগিয়ে আসি। ভালো থাকবেন, সুস্থ থাকবেন। আমাদের এই অনুষ্ঠান দেখার জন্য আপনাদেরকে অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ জানিয়ে my guest Mehdi, Nazmul and Dr. Juma, thank you for your valuable time, and until next week, stay safe, stay well, and see you soon again. Allah Hafiz.